been built in Roxbury, the experimental lab. If we have a problem that's an emergency, you can move people rapidly without congestion on the ground with personal rapid transportation. This bill that's been presented, the 1837, I would be looking, and we, as with people in the community, are looking forward that this can be implemented, and that's what we're supporting right now. I represent two of the groups that are in the area, and those groups there, over 1/3 of the people from Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury are supporting this. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Becker. Thank you for testifying. Mike Stanley is next, followed by Rochelle Rossi Kessel, and then Nicole Narakian and Christopher Narakian. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your names. If you could just stand at one of these podiums. Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Mike Stanley, I'm the CEO of TransitX. I live and work in Boston. And what I'm showing you is some of the visualizations that I put together of what a system would look like in Boston. So that's just down the block. And this is an example of a station that you'll see and in the winter snowstorms would look like, because they're heated rails, they don't, nothing stops it. So that's showing you an offline station where the pod can stop and people can get on. I made proposals for a number of different loops from the LMA district. This is showing you the Boston Archway, which would travel between Boston and the Logan Airport, where you would take a pod over the bridge. It'd also be an iconic gateway to the city. That's near South Station. Very low impact, very elegant, much less impact than the existing status quo with cars and buses and trains. And the economics make so much sense, and that's why I started TransitX, to be able to develop this system. It could extend into a regional mass transit system that connect outlying communities, and we can start this without delay. And you know, Boston can take a leadership role. The thing is that just Boston doing it won't help that much. What we need to do is also the billion or more Chinese and Indians that now look to the United States and say, we want cars. We need them to look at us and say, oh, we can get past cars. We can go beyond that and have a system like this that's carbon free. And I think if we have Harvard and MIT do that, they have the brand name, and I've been talking with them that now we can get people to think about it, because if the systems are put on MIT's campus and Harvard campus and in Boston, and we can solve our local issue, then that will set the stage for a world transformation. And that's what it's going to take, a world transformation. We need to change the climate around here for mass transit and elevated mass transit to change the climate. And that's what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Rochelle Rossi Kessel, followed by Nicole and Christopher, and then John Avalt.
Hi, I'm Raquel Rossi Kessel. I live in Rosendale.
Oh, hi.
And when I first heard about this program last year, I thought the best place is between Forest Hills and Rosendale Village, and it was suggested possibly even going up to Beach Street. I have a car. I'm a one-car family. I have kids, and going to Forest Hills is a hassle. I never drive Washington. If I drive that way, I go up to Hyde Park Ave. And biking, my husband bikes to work. Biking is really horrible on Washington Street. It's a dangerous place, and I have elderly friends who've said taking the bus. Sometimes people don't always get up for the elderly like they should. It can be crowded, and I have a friend who she dreads having to go to Forest Hills because of the bus. And the buses come pretty regularly through Rosendale Village, but there's times of the day, there's weekends where the buses are not there. This type of system would offer something as an alternative to what's there, and it would be great for families to use this, because I know so many people that would rather drive to Forest Hills, find a parking space, even if it's hard, and then take the T, than take the bus. And that little stretch is about a mile, and as a sample location, that would be a great place to offer this type of program. I think it would be really exciting. I think it'd be fun, and I support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. Appreciate it. Nicole and Christopher, and then John Avalt, and then Mark Older.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Nicole Narikian. This is Christopher Narikian. We thought it was much more important for him to come here today than go to school. He's in kindergarten. Christopher and I are residents of Salem, Mass. We visited the JPod demonstration this summer down at the waterfront in Boston, and we became enthusiastic for the potential change. I lived in downtown Boston for about 10 years. And I've been working in the limousine industry for about 15. I don't think anyone is on the streets of Boston more than I am. And I'll tell you right now, 45 minutes to go a quarter of a mile is not efficient. I think I can speak on behalf of most of my friends in the industry. It's terrible. So we're all on the same page here. We lived through the big dig. We operated through the big dig, through the changes of the streets going in one direction and the other. And I think it's up to $24 billion that they've used so far on the big dig. That's the city's best attempt at solving our transportation issue. Only a few years later, we have a bigger issue. So I think we need to move in another direction, and I think we all believe we should move in another direction. Originally, when I started my limousine company 4 years ago, I thought, wow, they made the big dig and they didn't connect North and South Station. Where did this go wrong? So I thought, hey, maybe this would be a good business opportunity. Maybe I can start my limousine company by creating a solution to this. But it really just didn't make sense financially. So this would be a great way to Band-Aid that. I agree also that that should be the first implementation of this. And Bill number 1837 is going to open the door for all the innovators and the creative minds to come up with a great solution for this. The world wants to be independent. People want to be independent. This is an independent means of travel that makes sense. So the status quo just isn't adequate. The attractiveness and the novelty of having the color and the fun, and I mean, Christopher was so excited, to get in. It's going to draw tourism into the city. It's going to increase the economic stability of the city, and it's also, at the same time, bifold, going to help transport that tourism. I don't know, the private funding is great. I can't imagine why Boston wouldn't say, hey, let's go, let's be the innovators. Let's make a name for ourselves. Let's stop being conservative about everything and take a step forward in the right direction and make a change for our future. You want to say something? Want to say something, honey? No? Well, Christopher loves the JPods. So that's all we've got to say today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Christopher. It's great to meet you today. Thank you, Nicole and Christopher. John Avalt is next, followed by Mark Older, and then Karen Weber.
My name is John Avalt, currently from Arlington, Massachusetts, formerly from Chesborough Road in West Roxbury, Saunders Street in Brighton, Chestnut Hill Avenue in Brighton. Mr. Chairman, honorable councilors, some of the testimony that you're hearing today focuses on the environmental benefits that personal rapid transit, PRT, could bring to Boston and Massachusetts. I want to point out an aspect of the economic significance that this new technology could have for Boston. Although it has now been 2 years since I retired as chief economist at the Boston Redevelopment Authority, I continue to see Boston's strong economy as a force for good, benefiting its residents, businesses, and workers. In the modern Boston economy, space is precious, and land use competition is fierce. We need space to live and space to work. We also need means to get from one place to another, and the various transportation systems and infrastructures that we use all have both costs as well as benefits. The private automobile provides a high level of convenience and flexibility, but a very high cost. We see this in the price that we pay to own and operate a car in Boston, and in the price we pay to park. But there are other dimensions of this cost that are not so obvious. The number of jobs in Boston exceeds the city's population count, and these jobs pay on average significantly more than the state and national average. Boston's office buildings contain more than 35% of the city's jobs, and these jobs require, on average, less than 250 square feet of building space each. Hospitals contain about 12% of the jobs in the city, and they correspond to an average of 211 square feet of building space each. But one parking space in a multi-story parking garage requires more than 300 square feet of built space. Seen in this light, the automobile is costing us more than just the money we spend day to day. We are paying with the limited land that we need for jobs and housing. And because buildings and infrastructure are long-lived, we are paying by mortgaging our future. A technology that both improves transportation access and conserves Boston's valuable land for more productive uses deserves our serious consideration and our active investigation. PRT could compete with the private automobile for convenience and access, and it could steer our land use investments to more productive areas. Senate Bill 1837 may help move us in this direction, and I hope that you will voice your support for it. And if it pleases the council, I have printed copies of my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Avold. We will, Dan, if you want to grab those, we'll make sure that members of the committee who had to leave will get copies. Thank you very much. Mark Older, then Karen Weber, and then Dr. Bill Loesch.
My name is Mark Older. I live at 50 Mount Vernon Street in Charlestown for a long time. I formerly was also at the BRA and also a private consultant working internationally. And I have to tell you that I have seen in the process of my work in both places the value of increasing the flexibility and the availability of transportation in the public realm. I want to emphasize that nothing in the bill that you're being asked to support approves any technology, any company, any route that is just trying to create a basis that will allow the people behind the different systems, you've already heard from two this morning, this afternoon, to consider this as an attractive place because they understand the rules and the regulations and tend to accept them. Part of my role, that's my own speech, I'm going to read briefly from one of the letters that we received in support of this, and then even more briefly from two of the others. The first one is from Katie Masek, Director of Development, the Institute of Contemporary Art, and she's writing in support of the bill. Personal rapid transit has the ability to contribute to solving crowding, congestion, and pollution problems in our city, while simultaneously addressing cost-sensitive issues of inadequate public transit infrastructure and energy saving. Legislation to permit the implementation of personal rapid transit would contribute to solving these issues while introducing a completely new element of urban transportation, demonstrating Boston's commitment to sustainability, innovation, and progress. Senate Bill 1837 will establish guidelines for the introduction of personal rapid transit systems that encourage energy efficiency, economic sustainability, and world-class design for our city. I urge members to support the Senate and House representatives to vote in favor of Bill 1837. I'm going to read even more briefly. These are from competitors of JPod. The first one is Metrino Global Projects in New Zealand. Bill James related to me information on Massachusetts Senate Bill 1837. I would like to affirm that if Massachusetts passes such a performance standard law, my company will make every practical effort to identify, capitalize, build factories, and deploy networks in Massachusetts. And he concludes by saying, my company is currently working toward deployment of our Metrino PRT in Delhi, India, one of the largest cities in the world, and 12 other cities in Brazil and Europe. So when we're talking about bringing industry in, we are talking very big. This next letter is from Swenson Solar, Santa Cruz, California. He supports the bill, and he says, in the conclusion, is now practical and economic for commercial buildings to build based on the accomplishments of research by his student team. Published calculations demonstrate the feasibility of this solar approach to transportation, and I would be happy to review these calculations with your staff if there are any doubts this technology can meet engineering requirements and be accomplished economically. When Massachusetts passes Senate Bill 1837, Swenson Solar will be there to design and build energy systems to produce net zero emissions, net gain energy, and long-awaited positive, exportable economic activity for a better world. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do to support this. Finally, from ET3 Global Alliance, our company is committed to adopting ET3, which is the higher speed, less urban version of this, in all jurisdictions that adopt market-driven value based on policies such as Massachusetts Senate Bill 1837. Let me conclude by saying that I had many roles at the BRA, one of which was Director of Comprehensive Planning, which required me to look at technology changes and advancement throughout the world. And in that program, we were able to bring some money-saving and environmental improvements into Boston that did make us a leader. The second, one of the other roles I had was Director of Waterfront Planning, and one of the goals of the BRA, one of the most difficult ones, was to try and spread the congestion and the excitement about the development of the waterfront throughout other waterfront neighborhoods of the city to make it more beneficial to the neighborhood communities and less stressful by being over-concentrated. I believe that this bill would encourage that same kind of redistribution and enhancement of economic activity. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Older. Dr. Karen Weber next, and then Dr. Bill Loesch is the last that I have signed up. If there's anyone who didn't sign up or whose name I inadvertently omitted, just raise your hand and we'll bring you up after Dr. Loesch.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Councilors Murphy and O'Malley, for running this hearing and to the work you're doing on the Environmental Committee. My name is Dr. Karen Weber. I'm the Executive Director of Foundation for a Green Future and Boston Green Fest. We are concerned about a number of things, but to begin with, I would like to follow what Dr. Douglas mentioned about the climate and go one step further. So it's not just about warming and ocean flooding, but right now the oceans are at about 50% saturation in carbon. The oceans are our largest carbon sink. And right now we are acidifying the ocean at a rate that if we continue to produce carbon in our atmosphere that will continue to go over the oceans, the estimates now are very shaky because things are going so fast, they're not really clear. But we're creating vinegar out of our oceans. That's the best way I can say it. And what we are looking at is a situation of the fish that are bony fish, creatures that make shells, will be unable to create those bones or those shells. And because if you put something in vinegar, you know that dissipates. This is what is happening to the ocean. But even more than that, the plankton in the ocean will not be able to survive. Plankton constitute, they give us 50% of the oxygen we breathe in this atmosphere. The other 50% comes from the plants and the trees on the earth. So if we do in our oceans, not only are we doing in our fish, we're doing in our oxygen. So we're talking borrowed time to be able to breathe. We're not even talking about flooding. We're talking about major survival. And I think the reality has not hit us. So what I am questioning right from the start, and also sadly, I was at the hearing at the State House last week on energy. Our timelines are far off. We're talking 2050, reducing 80%. We're crazy. We might as well just call it a day. We are so far off on our timelines. 10 years ago, we said make 2020 an 80%. We should have 2020 80%. Putting 2050 as an 80% reduction in our emissions is basically a recipe for disaster. So what they're saying is, from the expert witnesses and research that I've seen, that within the next 5 years, if we don't get our emissions to basically zero or very, very near to that, what will happen in 20 years' time, or somewhere after the 20-year mark, is we will not have 50% of our oxygen to breathe. And we'll be in a world of 9 billion people fighting for oxygen. So, and as we know already, our water is at a crucial point. So just fresh water is, and we're using it at an unprecedented rate in our fracking, in other forms of energy. So what we need to be doing is really saying, we have a choice, we have a decision to make. Are we going to wake up and say, look, these things are not tenable? And I've done a lot of research. Boston has been a leader in so many things, but guess what? Boston's not a leader in green. Far be it. Where they go to 7 other major cities in the country before they come to Boston and look at innovation and green. In spite of having our academic institutions here and all the things that Boston can make, we can turn that around. We can be a leader in green. This form of transportation is one of them. It doesn't mean it's the only one, but I think what we need to be doing is looking at these alternatives. We need to go to solar, we need to go to wind, we need to go to kinetic energy, we need to do whatever we can do as quickly as we can do it. And I think Boston, our mayor, our councilors need to speak out and really say, we need to put our foot down. And you can be the educators. Boston should be the educators for the world. We can make that decision. And it's not going to help by pretending that 2050 is a good time for a timeline to get 80% reduction in emissions, when in fact that's just convenient for us and our companies. It's not a question of convenience anymore. It's a question of what we need to do to make this place available to us in our, in 20 years. All right, if my life goes, it goes. But I've got kids, we all have children, we want our grandchildren. I'm asking that we make that move to go ahead and say we can be that place for innovation, alternatives, and really making this place a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Dr. Bill Loesch is the final person I have that's signed up. I want to acknowledge we've been joined by the District 8 Councilor Josh Zakum. Thank you, Councilor Zakum, for joining us. Is there anyone else who hasn't testified that would like to? Seeing and hearing none, we'll conclude with Dr. Loesch.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Murphy, for having the vision to support this particular hearing, and for Chairman O'Malley for hosting this. It's a great vision, but it can happen. We've had great minds already presented. We've got some of the best minds right here. 2 of the best right here, and the best right here, okay? We got to do it. We got to do it. As everybody said, Boston talks about being a leader. This is your opportunity, right? 50 years ago, I was living at Columbia Point, working with MIT and Jane Wampler, and we were putting UMass out there. We were talking about putting a monorail out there. Never happened. UMass Boston could have this system. Fairmont line, the commuter line going from Hyde Park to South Station, could have this system now. I'm thinking the mitigation money from the Big Dig could really help with the Fairmont line, 10-mile ride. So I 100%, 400% support what excellent testimony that you heard before. And the two visionaries in front of us, I hope you can carry it forward, because this is the time. This will make Boston a leader in the world and in different ways. When Dr. Douglas talked about the water rising, just having, if the water's under here and you got the JPods above the water, so when the water comes up, you're protected. Little side thought. But I 100% support this and glad that you're giving us this hearing, and hope that the state continues the support and that you can get your other colleagues to quickly understand the real impact of this particular hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lotion. Thank you for all your leadership on this and many, many other issues. I will get to you in 1 second, Mr. Tony. We're going to conclude, not seeing any other folks looking to testify. Owen, did you have a concluding remark? Then we'll get to you, sir.
Sure. I remember you mentioned some concerns about the infrastructure. The footprint is really light compared to any other type of transit system. So the support columns are about 3 feet around, and the actual stations are small, about the size of 2 parking spaces in a parking lot. So instead of having one big station and having to do eminent domain and other things to take the land, you can have a cluster of smaller stations. Think what Zipcar does. They get agreements from local businesses to have parking spaces. That is something similar to what we would be trying to do as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Back in the good old days, when I was a little kid, United States was by far the largest producer of oil, right? And now United States is by far the largest producer of solar silicon. We call the oil as a black gold. Silicon, solar silicon could be the next black gold. So why don't we capitalize it? Since right now we are by far the largest producer. We produce more than 50% of the world's solar silicon.